going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of the NFL Betting Show powered by FTN Bets, live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Happy Friday. Hopefully everybody's having a fantastic day. I'm joined by Taylor Mathis and Kyle Murray of FTN. Chris Meaney hanging out with you. Have any live comments, questions, leave them there in the YouTube section. We are going to run through the schedule, talk about our favorite picks, talk a little bit, not so much about last night, but a little bit about CMC. Things that happened last night. More exciting, I think, last night. CMC getting traded than watching that primetime football game, although credit to the Cardinals to get a W. But check this out. Look at Taylor Mathis. This is like, she is living large here. You got screens behind you. Everybody's like making their books. Oh, man, fantastic stuff. Tell us, where are you at? What's going on?
I'm in Vegas right now with Superbook, out here for work, and then I'm going to a music festival tomorrow that I'm very excited about. I feel like I'm going to relive my middle school youth days at the We Were Young Fest. Should be super fun. I'm like so excited to see My Chemical Romance. Paramore is the one that I'm most excited to see, All American Rejects. So I'm here for the music, but I'm also here to work while I'm here in the book, and Superbook is the best place to be in Vegas to watch games. So having a good time.
Yeah, I bet you are. Hopefully have a fantastic weekend. It looks like a really good lineup for that concert as well, and we'll try to provide some winners. Kyle Murray, he's a decent background there. You know, looks like somebody's like, little jump shot there behind you. No screens like Taylor, but you've been hot fire. I'm surprised that chair hasn't melted. Some of your picks on this show and over at FTNBets.com. Dude, you are crushing it. We're happy to have you. What's going on, sir?
Yeah, it's been good to give out some winners there. It's always good to go 3 for 3. That's Steph Curry there, though. That's not just someone.
Oh,
that's the best shooter of all time. Yeah. I don't have quite the backdrop. I don't have the book behind me there. It's a great spot there for Taylor. But yeah, pumped to give out some more picks. Hopefully some more winners. The 3 picks that I have today are 3 that I like a lot this week. So again, looking for some more winners.
Nice. Absolutely. That is just not just a guy, one of the best shooters of all time, Steph Curry. It's hard for me to see, people. Yeah. Okay, so we appreciate you guys hanging out again. We are going to run through 3 of our favorite picks. We got a gold, bronze, and a silver each. We're going to roll through the schedule, highlight a couple games, some matchups that we're looking forward to seeing, things that we're going to have our eye on heading into this week. Of course, we have 4 teams on bye, just like last week, and week 7 got underway with an Arizona win last night. Andy Dalton, primetime, under the bright lights, threw himself a couple pick sixes. Nothing out of the norm when it comes to Andy Dalton. But Taylor, I don't really want to talk about that game. I do want to focus on a team inside the NFC West, like the Arizona Cardinals. Picked up their 3rd win yesterday. DeAndre Hopkins, a big boost to that team. It felt like years since they won a home game. They finally got that win at home. They're kind of back into it. But there was a big trade last night in the NFL. We don't normally see these type of players get moved mid-season. Christian McCaffrey on his way to San Fran, back in the Bay Area. I saw some footage of him in the 23 red, looking sharp. He's probably going to be a little limited this week, maybe some red zone packages. I don't really want to talk props. I just want to get your thoughts on this team. Over the past couple of years, they have really went after running backs. They've spent a 3rd-round pick on multiple running backs. Now they spent multiple picks yesterday to get CMC. Their odds have changed slightly to win the Super Bowl. I'm seeing 16-1, 7-1 to win the NFC. You can still get plus money using our free prop shop over at FTNBets.com. Links inside the description of this video. Plus 100 to win the division. It's a 3-way tie with the Rams, and believe it or not, the Seahawks at 3-3. Mentioned the Cardinals now 3-4. Does this move the needle at all for you? Are the Niners legitimate Super Bowl contenders now, in your opinion, with this addition?
I think that the 49ers have always been Super Bowl contenders in my eyes. I remember last week I was talking about Falcons versus San Francisco, and I said last week that the NFC West is pretty much the 49ers to lose at this point. I feel like they are all in right now, and I absolutely love that they went out and got Christian McCaffrey. That was the one offensive piece that I think that they needed. They're in do or die mode, though. They want to win a championship now. They don't have a draft pick now until 2026. So, I mean, it's pretty much you got to make it happen or you're not going to make it happen with the roster that you've bolstered up. I love the move. I think it's great, especially with Elijah Mitchell out for the 49ers for the foreseeable future. I think it's a great pickup, and it's amazing to see such a big guy like McCaffrey being moved midseason like you were talking about.
Yeah, wild, and not to have a pick in the next couple of years. I guess, you know, it's kind of worked out for the Rams. I know they've given up a lot of their future to get certain pieces, and they just had that championship, and that was the team that got in the way of San Fran's run last year, Kyle. But, you know, Taylor mentioned it, some of the backs, and, you know, Elijah and Tyrion Davis-Price is a 3rd-round pick, and Trey Sermon, and a lot of running backs that they've tried to make work, and we know what Shanahan can do with some of these running backs. So maybe moving forward, we don't expect them to be too involved this week. Kind of the same question to you. Do you feel like you this is a good value in terms of sprinkling some money on the 49ers and moving forward, maybe looking ahead too far, I think, but I'd like to get your thoughts for next week. Does Debo get fewer targets? Is Debo more a traditional wide receiver now? Are you worried about CMC? He's a guy that being plus money for 4.5 grabs. We know how valuable he is through the airs. Do you feel like he's going to get a downtick in some of his usage through the air? And does this hurt other people? What do you think?
I mean, it kind of depends on what version of McCaffrey you're talking. Like the last 2 weeks in Carolina, when he was racking up 7, 8, 9 catches, I feel like you would probably have to assume a little bit of a downtick there. And it is very interesting to think about it. Like when you think of Shanahan, like you think what better coach to have this new weapon in his toolbox, right? Like it's such an elite player that can do so many different things. So I think that's a great addition for San Francisco. So in terms of Shanahan adding that sort of player, I think he's going to be able to accomplish a lot. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, right? You have Debo, you have Ayuk. Kittle is like an afterthought now in this offense, it seems, which is unfortunate because he's arguably the most talented tight end in the NFL. Obviously, McCaffrey joining this team, I have no doubts that they're going to be able to incorporate him well in the offense. And I do think, your point on Debo, I would be very surprised if he continues this like traditional or this non-traditional hybrid role where he's at times getting 6, 7, 8 carries. I'd be pretty surprised to see that occur, but I don't think we'll see his rushing production completely go away. I think they'll keep him involved in certain packages, certain trick plays, that sort of stuff. But in terms of what this does for the 49ers, I mean, I already had them as probably the top team in their division anyway, and probably a top 3 or 4 team in the conference. I don't know if I want to, label them as a Super Bowl contender yet. And I think getting McCaffrey is a big help, but in terms of what makes this team so good, it's their defense. This is one of the better defenses in football. But in terms of the Super Bowl contenders, I think the Bills, Eagles, those 2 teams just have my eye right now. So in terms of Super Bowl, probably not. I don't mind sprinkling. I think it helps them quite a bit, but still not one of my favorite picks to win the Super Bowl after this move.
Yeah, the Bills are favored at plus 275. The Eagles in here next, still without a loss, getting the week off here. The Chiefs, the Bucks, then the Niners, followed by the Chargers, Vikings, Ravens, Packers, and some value on Taylor's Cowboys. Quan, if you want to bring up the schedule, let's dive into this just a little bit, right? We're going to get the return of Dak Prescott. They weathered the storm without Dak Taylor over the past couple of weeks. The defense has been on full display. Micah Parsons is an absolute stud. You're seeing 7. I see 8 in certain spots. The Lions have been one of those teams that have just hung around and covered despite, poor play defensively. Jared Goff inside domes at home in this game, dome. What do you think of this matchup? What do you think of Dak and the Cowboys at 22-1 potentially to win the Super Bowl? Because, yeah, the Eagles are undefeated, Taylor, but it's really wide open in the NFC. It seems like the Bucks and the Packers and the Rams, they've been nothing but really disappointments this year.
Do we think the NFC East is the best division in the NFC? Because right now it looks that way. I mean, we have your Eagles that are undefeated. We've got my Cowboys that are 4-2, which puts them in 3rd place behind the Giants, who are 5-1. The NFC East has really shown up so far this season. I'll get more into one of my picks for later is part of the Cowboys-Lions game coming up this week. But I'm excited to see Dak Prescott back and see what he is able to do. And I think this is a great game for them in a get-right spot because they're going to be against a Detroit's pass defense that is god awful. They are the worst in the league. So I think this is a good spot for Dak to potentially test out where he's at. He doesn't have to go crazy. If he's shaking off a little bit of rust, this is going to be the team to do it against. So I think this is a really good spot for the Cowboys. I think this Cowboys team is still in it. Maybe that's the fan of me speaking out, but I think the Cowboys still have potential here. It's still early in the season, too. I mean, we're only going into week 7. You never know what is going to happen with weeks to come. It's going to be interesting to see what Dak does this week against this Detroit team and how he comes back playing after injury.
I think that's good value on Dallas. I mean, it pains me to say. I know the Eagles are rolling through some pretty mediocre teams right now, but this Cowboys team at 22-1, I mean, they hung around at the Lincoln Philly with Cooper Rush, let's be honest, right? If there was Dak on that squad, they would have been able to push the pace a little bit more. And I think it'll be a different outcome when those 2 teams meet up later in the year in Dallas. Kyle, is there a game or two? I know we got some props and we'll get into those in a second. Is there a game or two that you got your eye on? Because Taylor's coming in with the side, but you and I are like, we're just straight props here.
Yeah.
Is there a matchup that you're looking for? Maybe it could be a fun little fantasy game or a fun, prop betting, same game parlay stuff, or maybe a team that you're looking a potential upset here on this list.
Yeah, I think there's a few pretty good ones. In terms of, I guess I'll just comment real quick on that Dallas-Detroit game. I like the over in that game. Like, I think this game's going to be a barn burner. And even though Detroit has been terrible defensively, they've been able to keep up with teams offensively. And now it sounds like there's a good chance they get Swift back. Amon-Ra St. Brown's off the injury report. So I like the over 49 in that one. There are a couple picks in the I guess the top bets of that Houston and Vegas game, but there's quite a few props I like. Betting on some Josh Jacobs overs I like. His rushing props, believe it or not, has worked their way into the 80s now. His receiving props have also they've kind of stayed pretty reasonable. So I like some of Jacobs' receiving props as well. I like a Devontae Adams anytime touchdown this week. So that game's also one that I like. And then even Seattle and Chargers, both of these two offensive have also been playing pretty quick. So this is going to be another good environment for offensive production. So I would say outside of that Detroit and Dallas game, Houston and Vegas, and then Seattle and the Los Angeles Chargers are two games that I think will be pretty interesting from an offensive production standpoint and good spots to target some overs and some props.
And I believe the Detroit Lions have played to the over in every single game but one, right? I mean, they couldn't get anything done against Bill Belichick, but they've been pushing the pace on offense and they've been giving up some points as well. Taylor, I want to ask you one question again about the schedule. If there's one upset, who's the upset? Last time we did this, I think we individually called 2 or 3 as a group, even though they weren't our picks. I'm going to throw one at you.
Ooh,
could Green Bay lose again? Could Green Bay lose again, or could Washington cover this 4.5? Like, what the heck is going on with the Packers? I know it's Heineke under center, but you're saying no chance. Green Bay rebounds?
Nah, that will not be my pick. That is for sure my upset pick. And I keep looking at this line, and I am confused by it. Maybe I'm missing something, but I like the Falcons this week over Cincinnati. Okay. I feel like this line is way too big. Cincinnati is getting 6.5. I don't really understand why. I think this Falcons team is being so underestimated and so underrated. I had them last week to cover against the 49ers, and they ended up coming away with the upset. I could see it happening again this week. They're 6-0 now against the spread as well. So I think they keep this close at least, but I would not be surprised if there was a quote unquote upset. A lot of people think that Cincy and Joe Burrow is back. I'm not on that wavelength yet.
Yeah, credit to Arthur Smith and this Falcons team and Marcus Mariota. They're getting it done. Yeah, you're right. I mean, they not only covered, they handled the 49ers, and they were up by a couple scores, a majority of that game, and made Jimmy G drop back and throw the ball 40-plus times, which is really not the recipe of success for the 49ers in a tough spot this week against Kansas City. Maybe he's dropping back 40-plus times again. I know this is a big spread, Kyle, and I don't know how you feel about these big spreads. Sometimes I just stay away, but people are in pools where they have to pick every single game. The Tampa Bay matchup with Carolina, Walker did nothing last week. We just talked CMC's gone. Not that Robbie Anderson was doing a whole lot. He's gone. DJ Moore can't get the ball in his hands. Tampa's, there's been some backdoor covers against them the other way. Last week, they just straight up lost to the Steelers. They're going through some things as well. 13's a big number. What side would you take on that? And do you think Carolina could even get 13 points?
Yeah. If I had to pick, I do tend to stay away from these large spreads unless it's one of the truly elite teams like Buffalo or, like a Philly, for example, going against if Buffalo would be playing Carolina and they were at 13 or 14.5, I'd be fine taking Buffalo. I don't think Tampa's on that level, and we've seen a lot of struggles from Tampa, playing down to their competition. So if I had to pick a side, I would still go with Tampa just because I'm really worried about Carolina's ability to move the ball. They traded two of their top 4 or 5 offensive weapons, I guess, kind of depending on where you view Robbie Anderson as well. The offense is going to have a tough time moving the ball. Third string quarterback in there. Tampa's defense has been good. The pissed off Tom Brady narrative could be in full effect here coming off of that loss at Pittsburgh. So if I had to pick a side, I would take Tampa here, but don't feel great about that big of a number against a team that's been a letdown in my eyes this year.
Yeah, they have. All right, people are here for the picks. Let's get to the picks. Let's lock them in. Taylor, you are first, my friend. Let's go with your bronze pick. What you got for us?
Okay, bronze pick. I'm looking at the Giants-Jags game. Something is weird. Something is fishy about this line to me. Jacksonville, the team that is 2-4, is favored by 3 over New York, who is 5-1. I say that with a question mark because I'm very confused by it. The line opened with the Giants being 1-point dogs, but 63% of the public is taking the points with New York. And the spread keeps moving even further in favor of the Jags. That leads me to believe that Vegas has not bought in on the Giants, and I haven't either. If you think about it, New York is coming off of 2 big comeback wins over Green Bay and Baltimore as straight up underdogs, which credit to the Giants for pulling off those wins, but they were slightly lucky in both of them. They particularly are playing well in the fourth quarter. Over the last 3 weeks, New York sits in the top 3 for average points scored in the fourth. There will be a natural regression, I feel, here with the Giants. So I'm going to lay the points with Jacksonville. This game script is ideal for the Jags. The Jags are good at putting a stopper on the run game. They rank 3rd in fewest ground yards allowed per game to opponents currently. And New York loves to run the ball with running back Saquon Barkley. We all know that. Barkley is a little banged up. Maybe they will try to work in QB Daniel Jones to throw the ball a bit more, except Jones is only averaging 154 yards through the air. The only QB worse than that is Chicago's Justin Fields. Jones isn't a quarterback that slings for 300 yards a game when you need it. In fact, out of the current starting quarterbacks in the league, he ranks 20th in completions right now. The Jags, I think they bring the Giants back down to earth on Sunday. I'm going to take the Jags -3 as my bronze pick this week.
I love it. And Jacksonville really strong against the run, as you mentioned, and one team not strong against the run, the New York Giants, tied with the Chargers at 5.6 yards per carry allowed. And something that we've seen lately, Kyle, is the emergence of Travis Etienne. Like James Robinson at the start of the season looked good, but Etienne's starting to play a little bit more. He's starting to get some more run, more snaps, and he's starting to look pretty good in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the arrow continuing to trend up there for ETN. I mean, he has kind of lived and died so far by some of these big plays. You know, I think it was a 51-yard scamper that he started the game off with last week. But one thing that I think is encouraging for ETN is the volume's going to continue to go up. So I'm very intrigued in what we can see from ETN going forward.
And it's hard to get excited about anybody outside of Saquon Barkley, right, Taylor, inside this offense for the Giants. I mean, in fantasy, I picked up like Daniel Bellinger in certain spots, and I rolled out Darius Slayton last week. Thanks for nothing. This week, you know, everyone's getting excited about Wan'Dale Robinson, who could actually be a nice little gadget player for them. We'll see if Jacksonville is able to force them to throw the football. Maybe we'll see a little bit more. So Taylor leads us off with the Jags. We'll throw to you, Kyler Murray, K Murr, DFS. AKA Kyler. What you got? Bronze pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go to another young running back. Dameon Pierce has been fantastic over the last 4 weeks. He started off in week 1, only saw 11 carries, and that was actually his only game where he's gone under his current line, which is at 69.5. And again, I feel like every time I'm on the show, I recommend to make sure that you're staying up to date with the alerts for the bet tracker, because every week I've had picks that have moved quite a bit. Dameon Pierce was actually at 61.5 rushing yards yesterday morning over on Caesars. He's now up to 69.5, but I still like the over at 69.5. So he's going to be my bronze pick this week. One of my favorite plays of the week as well. I am for over 80 rushing yards, 83 rushing yards to be exact in my model. And like I mentioned, you know, you talk about a guy who's been heavily involved, and you know they've obviously been persistent in getting him touches every single week. He's now had 4 straight games with 14 plus carries and 2 games with 20 or more carries over the last 4 weeks. So Dameon Pierce, I'm not necessarily concerned about a potential game script issue with them falling behind to Vegas. I think it'll be totally fine for this Houston offense with Dameon Pierce leading the way. He's going to get tons of touches. He's averaging nearly 5 yards per carry so far this season. So Dameon Pierce over 69.5 is my bronze play.
I love it. He's a beast. He's one of the best young running backs in the game. And I'm going to piggyback off of that pick, actually, Kyle. And I saw that you put your picks in first, and I was like, nice. I really like that Pierce. I couldn't believe the opening line at 61.5. And you're right. It's moved up here to 69.5, as you mentioned. And his rushing plus receiving is interesting as well at 83.5. Would you say you had him for just under that?
I am for 80. I am for 83 rushing alone. I am for about and I'm for almost 20 receiving. So yeah, I like that combined line as well.
So I'm going to take his over on receiving yards. Just that. I love the rushing yard prop. I agree with you. Even if this game script is heavy, Las Vegas pushing the pace and scoring. I still think they'll stick to the run. We've seen over the past couple weeks, to your point, they really have used Dameon Pierce quite a bit. 26 carries and 31 opportunities the last time we saw him play in week 5. He had 5 targets. He played 46 of the 58 snaps on offense. In week 5, he ran 13 routes. In comparison, Rex Burkhead, who got a lot of the play in week 1 in the first NFL game, which is understandable for a veteran to act as the lead, and we saw quickly Pierce overtake the backfield. In week 5, Rex Burkhead played 12 of the 58 snaps. He only ran 9 routes. And in week 4, Pierce played 40 of the 57 snaps, 20 routes run, and he had 6 targets and 17 snaps for Burkhead. So 9 catches on 11 targets in the last 2 games for Pierce. He's reeled in 13 of the 15 balls thrown his way, 57 yards total. That's 11.4 yards per game right here at this number. It's minus 120 over at DraftKings. I'm seeing minus 133 for 12.5. This could move up to 12.5 and 13.5, maybe at a better number than minus 120. But either way, I do believe that he's going to get a couple targets out of this backfield. Kyle, I think you'll get your rushing yards. And like I said, if Vegas here, as they enter as 7-point favorites, hey, Taylor's back, then we can get the maybe a couple passing attempts, right? A little dump offs. And you mentioned earlier in this game, there's actually a lot to like from this game, I think. Because Josh Jacobs, you talked earlier at the 80 rushing yards. This is a great spot for him. The Texans have struggled against running backs. I think Jacobs has at least 5 grabs in 3 straight games as well. He's being used differently this year than in years past. He's been like it's a new coaching staff. He's basically been a bell cow running back inside this offense, carries on the ground and catches through the air as well. And his receiving yard props at 17.5. So really like both running backs in this game. A shout out to Nico Collins as well. Taylor, maybe nobody even realized that you were gone. I looked and I was like, oh no, where'd Taylor go? She's making a quick bet behind her. You made that bet. You're on the Jags.
I heard the Dameon Pierce play from Kyle, and I was like, hang on, I got to go write it out. My ticket over there.
Very nice. Okay.
My camera started going like this. I was like, we got to fix that real quick.
Oh, you're killing it.
Moving it really fast.
Live production here. You made a couple bets, quick bets. So now we're on to our silver picks, and you lead us off.
Yes. Okay. Silver pick. Lions at the Cowboys. We talked about it a bit, but I am thrilled for Dallas QB Dak Prescott to be back for the first time since week 1. It's perfect timing against Detroit. They've dropped 6 straight on the road, and they give up the most total yardage to opponents in the league. Cowboys looking to get right after a shaky showing on Sunday Night Football to Chris, your Eagles, which, hey, power to you guys. I wasn't expecting Philly to look that good, and they did. But I do love this spot for the Cowboys. Even with Prescott back, I'm hesitant to take a prop involving him just because he may be a bit rusty at first. I would rather lean into Dallas's run game and go with running back 1, Ezekiel Elliott, over 64.5 rushing. Elliott has hit this over in 2 straight and in half of his games this season. Elliott's averaging over 15 rushing attempts per game, and Dallas OC Kellen Moore should get his backfield more involved against the Lions run D that gives up the most ground game yardage in the league, 167 yards per game. Detroit's defense as a whole only stopping third downs 50% of the time. They're having a lot of trouble getting that defense off the field. This is an ideal place on third down and short to feed the ball to Elliott and power through some of those downs. Going with Elliott over 64.5 rushing. I love this play as my silver pick this week.
I like it a lot too, Taylor. I think Zeke has a big day. I like him to score anytime touchdown. You can get that plus money, use our prop shop, get the best possible odds. 5.5 yards per carry. You mentioned Detroit. And even last year, right, Kyle? You know this team pretty well. They allowed the 5th most rushing yards last season. He's a little smirk. Yeah, I kind of do. And they have some nice, exciting players on offense, man. But this team hasn't been able to stop the run for a couple of years now. And Zeke's in a really good spot. How do you agree with Taylor and how, the offense and more and what they've done over the past couple weeks? I feel like that should be their identity. And run the rock, run the ball with these 2 backs and lead with your RB1 and Zeke. And I'm sure, they're going to get in situations. It's nice to have Dak to throw to his CD and get Schultz and Gallup involved, which they haven't been so far this season. That's going to happen, but I feel like this should be their true identity to run the rock. I think we'll see a lot of that this week.
I also took this pick in the pick tracker. I have Zeke for nearly 80 yards on the ground, 77 or 78, I believe, in my model. So, I also see a pretty significant edge here. the line on Vegas or on a lot of these Vegas sports books have Zeke for about 15.5 carries, which I think is a good line. I think that they're just underestimating his potential efficiency. And I don't think that necessarily has to come from Zeke. It could easily just come from the Lions being very bad against the run. So I think that's where the difference in the lines are between the Vegas lines and my model. So it's just efficiency on the ground. So like I mentioned, love the Zeke call there. So definitely one that I also have in the bet tracker.
All right. Well, 3 for 3 because I also have it, Taylor. So let's ride together. Kyle, better than riding with Russ, tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Silver, Tua Tagovailoa is expected to return this week for Miami. We've seen a little bit of everything over the past couple of weeks without Tua there. Kyle, you have a wide receiver you like in Miami as your Silver pick. Who is it? Is it Waddle, Tyreek? Is it Cedric Wilson? What you got over there?
Definitely not Cedric Wilson. It is going to be Jalen Waddle. This line was pretty confusing to me. And the only thing I can think of is that, these bookmakers or these line setters know something more about the Jalen Waddle injury than we do. But again, I'm not quite willing to bank on that. He practiced in a limited fashion every day this week. He is questionable going into the game, but he returned after the injury last week in a game that was a double-digit scoring game. Like they were never going to win the game. He didn't need to return, and he did. So I think he's okay. So we're talking about a wide receiver who has been one of the best wide receivers production-wise in the NFL this year. He has a line set at 58.5, coming off of a 129-yard performance with not only one backup quarterback playing, but two. Skylar Thompson started last week. Teddy Bridgewater finished, and he was still able to produce 129 receiving yards. He's now gone over 100 yards in 3 games this year, and he's gone over this number every single game. He's actually gone over 69 yards or more in every game that Tua has started and finished. So 58.5 receiving yards, when you're talking about what we've seen from Waddle compared to what the line is at, you must be saying, okay, it must be a tough matchup. No, it's a matchup against the worst secondary in all of football. No team has allowed more receiving yards to opposing wide receivers than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the only justification for this line being this low that I can think of is injury. I'm not willing to predict that. I don't have a PhD, so I'm going to assume that Waddle is healthy and ready to go in this elite matchup against the Steelers with his quarterback back under center and Tua. So over 58.5 receiving yards for Jalen Waddle.
I was surprised that Teddy didn't start last week. He was cleared to play. Why didn't they roll him out as their starter? I don't understand. He came into the game and threw over 300 yards in like a minute.
I actually read preseason. I was reading a lot about some beat writers and maybe even some whispers from the team that maybe Skylar Thompson was actually just the better quarterback than Teddy. So maybe they just kind of use that as an excuse there, or maybe they just wanted to be careful with Teddy. Yeah. And Skylar, I don't want to say he didn't look great, but he didn't look terrible either. Obviously didn't really get the chance to shine last week, but Teddy came in and he got the job done. That's for sure.
He did get the job done. And Skylar, he was looking to Waddle's way, really.
Yeah.
Do you think that Tyreek as well as a decent play? He's roughly at like 78.5. I feel like that's a little low. I know it's high, really, but like for Tyreek, we haven't projected for over 90.
Yeah, I mean, that was another one like that. That's also another reason why I'm not sure that the line is reduced for Waddle because of the injury. Because I also think you can make a case that the Tyreek Hill line is just too low. Like it does feel like you don't see receivers lines get too high. Like even thinking back on Kupp last week, he was like 89.5. Jefferson was like 86.5 or something like that. So that's probably where you're going to cap a guy like Tyreek Hill out at. But the matchup is so good. So either that's telling me that Vegas and these lines are kind of incorporating the injury for Waddle, or they're just assuming that Miami's just not going to throw a whole lot because of the potential game script. But regardless, this secondary has been terrible for the Steelers.
I'm going to throw something in there from being here in Vegas that I've heard about this game. I think a lot of reason why we're seeing the numbers for the wide receivers on the Miami Dolphins so low is because they're very nervous right now to see if Tua and the Dolphins are going to be in old form at the beginning of the season, or if he's going to come back now and everything's going to have gone to trash. So I think that's why they're leaning more conservatively lower with a lot of it. I've also heard people around here in Superbook talking that they're worried about how well the O-line is going to protect Tua. So they're worried that if he gets hit again, is he going to suffer another concussion and be out right away and they have to pull in another backup quarterback? I think that might be part of the reason surrounding some of the low wide receiver numbers too.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. This is a really good point, right? Tua coming back, if he takes another hit, I mean, my goodness, he's been in the news now. It's been a big topic, of course, concussions over the past few weeks and protecting Tua, and it's a topic for another day, but that's a really good point. And I do believe we'll see a lot of Raheem Mostert, Taylor, because of that. Like, he has gotten a lot of carries in the backfield over the past couple weeks. But what we know about Waddle and Tyreek and Kyle in this play is that, I mean, it only takes 1 or 2 grabs. These guys are so explosive and so fast and great with the ball in their hands that they can get to that number on really just a couple catches. I'm going to give my silver, and then we'll wrap up with silver or get into the gold. I am picking on a team that can't stop the run either. It seems like it's a trend here on this show. We're picking on teams that can't stop the run. Kenneth Walker last week in his first full game in the NFL, he popped off. He had 21 carries, his first full start with no Rashad Penny there. He finished with 97 yards and a touchdown. And just the week before that, he had 88 rushing yards on 8 carries. This week against the Chargers, his rushing yard prop is 67.5 at -115. I'm going to take the over on this one. I think he's in for another 15 plus carries. The Chargers have allowed 3 running backs to top 100 yards on them. Overall, they're allowing 125 rushing yards per game, a league high, tied with the Giants, 5.6 yards per carry allowed. We have Walker for 77 rushing yards and 17.8 carries. And looking at some of our advanced rushing stats, he has 22 missed tackles forced on 44 carries. Shout out to Kevin Adams, CEO, for running the numbers. Quick math, 50%, right? He made it seem like when we were chatting that it took him forever to run that math. Shots fired at him. But 50%, 22 missed tackles. Chubb leads the NFL with 42 on 110 carries. It's 38%. Pierce talked a lot about on the show already, 33 on 86 carries. It's 38%. Jacobs, 28 on 91 carries. It's 30%. Next up, not in terms of percentage, because it's higher, obviously a very small sample, but 22 missed tackles on 44 carries. This guy's a really good running back. Seattle is nowhere near as bad as I thought that they were going to be heading into the season. Geno is targeting some of his top wide receivers, some of his best weapons on the team. They're moving the ball. I like Walker here at over 67.5, and I take anything over 70 rushing yards. And I wouldn't be shocked if he had a couple catches out of the backfield too. That's not really something that he did in college. And I think he only had 2 catches last week. But if you want to get nuts, I saw plus 140 last week for 3 grabs. We'll see if that pops up again in a game where they are underdogs. They could potentially give him a couple targets as well. It is his backfield moving forward. Let's turn our attention to the gold picks. Taylor, lead us off, which I think you got 2 gold picks for us. Wow.
I do. I'm going to give you guys a little 2-for-1 special in the Browns-Ravens game. I'm so confused by the entire AFC North division, particularly these 2 teams. Baltimore in first place with a 500 record. In all 3 of their losses, they have blown double-digit leads in the second half. On the flip side, you have Cleveland, who have dropped 3 straight games. And this is the Ravens' shot to separate themselves from the rest of the division, in my eyes. Baltimore only trailed an average of 2 minutes a game every single game this season. They need to build a lead early and actually keep it this time. And who's going to be the man to do that? QB Lamar Jackson. Going with Jackson over 217.5 passing yards. Jackson's averaging under this number with 213 passing a game. QBR rating is top 5, though, with 64. Last season, Lamar did have a career-high 4 interceptions against the Browns. I wouldn't be surprised if he threw a pick in this game as well, but I do think that Jackson peppers the Browns secondary. They're giving up 230 yards through the air a game, well over that 217 number. And what's ironic to me is Cleveland's opponents aren't capitalizing on that. The Browns sit top 10 in fewest opponents' pass attempts per game, even though 4 out of the 6 QBs that the Browns have faced have gone over this number of 217. The 2 that didn't were Mitch Trubisky, and that's kind of shocking to me that he is one of those people. The other one was Marcus Mariota, who I just think he didn't even really need to throw the ball that much because the Falcons still came away with the win. Jackson is leaps and bounds better than both of those guys, so I'm going to take him over 217.5 passing as one of my gold plays. My second gold play that I'm going to go with is going to be on the other side of the ball. I'm going to go with Browns wideout Amari Cooper for an anytime touchdown. I just love Cooper, probably because he is an ex-Cowboy. But you can get that also at 225 on Superbook right now. Cooper is a favorite red zone and end zone target for QB Jacoby Brissett. Cooper has 4 TDs through 6 weeks, and Cooper is seeing double-digit targets almost every single game and ranks 5th in the league for receiving touchdowns right now. I like Cooper for an anytime TD, not saying that Cleveland is going to get the win in this one. I think Baltimore does, but I do like him to score a touchdown as another gold pick to additionally add on.
Yeah, Cooper's been great in terms of fantasy lane. He's been an absolute steal. He's going outside the top 40 of the wide receiver position. Nobody wanted him. It's like because Jacoby Brissett was under center. But guess what? Jacoby Brissett is throwing his way. He's using his best weapon, and that is Amari Cooper. One thing to keep an eye on, too, that I like that number with, it's fairly low, even though Lamar is known as a rushing quarterback, is just he may get Rashad Bateman back this week, which is huge for him in that offense. And he had over 160 yards, Bateman, in the first 2 weeks of the season, a touchdown in each of those games. He's kind of the high ADOT guy inside this offense as well. So that'd be a big boost. I think we'll see Lamar reach his peak when he is back in the lineup. We could see him early as this weekend against the Browns. Sticking inside the same game, Kyle, your gold pick, a member of the Brownies.
Yeah. Yep. I really like this game from a DFS and a fantasy and a betting perspective. I think it's going to be a good one. I agree with Taylor. I think the Ravens win, but I don't think that stops Nick Chubb from getting involved on the ground. I mentioned this same sort of matchup last week with Saquon Barkley against Baltimore. Over 72.5 rushing yards was the line for Barkley last week. Nick Chubb has been more efficient and a better overall producer on the ground than Barkley, and a 71.5 line for Nick Chubb. So I think it's just another sort of weird and confusing line for me this week. So Nick Chubb over 71.5 rushing yards is the bet. And like I mentioned, the matchup I think is not one that is great, but it's one that I think is continually being overrated based on this Baltimore kind of reputation that they have. But one thing about Chubb is he's gone over 100 yards in 4 of his 6 games this year, and he's gone over this number 71.5. He's actually gone over 82 rushing yards in 5 of his 6 games so far this season. So I just think that it's a little bit of a strange line at 71.5. Nick Chubb is one of the better runners in the entire NFL. My model has him for nearly 100 yards on the ground this week. So going to not only have interest in Nick Chubb in this particular bet, but also have interest in Nick Chubb to lead the NFL in rushing yards on Sunday. You can find that in the weekly specials category over on DraftKings. There's 2 names I'd like for that one. I'll actually throw out Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs, I like that one too. Not that I don't like Nick Chubb. I mean, obviously the guy is a beast.
Yeah.
I'm seeing his rushing attempt prop. I usually take it. It's sometimes like 17.5, and I'm just like, I'm going to take that. I know that the Browns are going to give him the ball like 18, 19 times. I'm seeing 15.5 rushing attempts. What do you have him for, Kyle? 17-ish?
Yeah, let me pull it up. Yeah, no, it's fine. I'll pull it up right now, and I'll actually look at the overall rushing yards prop as well, because I'm curious where the model has him. I have him for 17 carries today, or this week. Like I mentioned, 93 rushing yards. I do have Derrick Henry projected to lead the league in total rushing yards on Sunday, and that's also where the DraftKings book has him right now, plus 500. But Josh Jacobs plus 900, Nick Chubb plus 1,000. Those two are definitely up there in the model, so I like both of those potential bets as kind of long shots.
Yeah, Jacobs isn't just in a really good spot. And they've been using him like they should.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. The first couple of weeks I got away from it, and they've been using him, and they're hanging around anyway. Still only have 1 win. Yeah, 15.5. Other books 16.5, 17.5. So again, prop shop is pretty valuable. You mentioned Derrick Henry. That is my gold pick, but not for rushing yards. A couple weeks ago, Kyle, I was on the show and we chatted about this. We talked about the usage with Derrick Henry last year. He had a career high 2.5 targets, 2.2 catches, 19.3 receiving yards. Doesn't seem like a whole lot, but really as a guy just never got involved through the air until kind of last season. Only played 8 games. And it's really carried over into this season, not the first couple weeks, but lately, the last 3 games, he's averaging 4 targets, 3.3 catches, and 40.3 receiving yards. His receiving yard prop this week is 11.5 at minus 115. He has cruised past this number in each of his last 3 games pretty easily, including 2 weeks ago against the same Colts team he's going to play this Sunday. He had 22 carries for $114 in that contest, and he still reeled in 3 of his 5 targets for 58 receiving yards. The Colts are really struggling to stop running backs through the air. They've allowed the 4th most receiving yards per game to running backs, 49.5. They've allowed the 5th most catches per game to running backs, 5.5. And 9 running backs have had at least 14 plus receiving yards against the Colts this season. It is just week 7. That's it. Burkhead did it. Robinson, ETN twice, CEH, Henry, as I mentioned, Hilliard in the same game as Henry, Melvin Gordon, and Mike Boone in the same game as well. So I believe this is a pretty good spot for Derrick Henry, over 11.5 receiving yards at minus 115. Oh, 13.5. Maybe I wrote that down wrong. I still like this number. Let me get you a live look here. Why not? Prop shop. What do we got? Is it 11? Is it 13? I always mess these things up. It is 13, so I clearly messed it up. But I'm fine with the 13. I really am. I think that he surpasses this. I think, again, he's right into that 19-plus mark, 13.5 I'm seeing. And I'm not yet seeing a catch prop for him, but I would be interested. Oh, there it is. Kyle, what do you think about this? It's a bit much to ask for 3, but plus 140 for 3 grabs for Henry.
I'm projected for 2.45 catches. So, the model would
ask for 3.
Yeah, the model would tell you to take that considering it's plus 140. So, I like that one.
Okay. All right. Well, I think the safer bet, though, with some of these running backs is the receiving yards. That's kind of been working out, especially, I think, for you, Kyle and Benny.
Yeah.
When we were together a couple weeks ago, we talked about a handful of running backs, and Henry was one, and Pierce, and a few others catching balls out of the backfield as well. Daily Handle maybe missed the start of the show. Question the Falcons Bengals line. If it moves to 7.5, would you guys bet on the Falcons? And Taylor is already on the Falcons, so she would tell you, yeah. I mean, if it goes to 7.5, it's better than 6.5. Why not? I think she agrees. She's locking it in. She's locking in the bet for sure. Any final words, Kyle, from you?
No. Hopefully we can get some more winners here. It's been good being a guest on the show, and I'm hopefully another 3 for 3.
Okay. All right. We'll say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for taking the time to hang out here.
In and out.
Oh, your connection was in and out. Yeah, it was just, I don't know if you heard me, Taylor. It was just something about, can you hear me? Potentially? No, I don't think so. We'll wrap it up on that. Daily Handle, we do like the Falcons to cover. We'll say goodbye to Taylor, get those bets in. Kyle Murray, K-Murray, DFS, myself at Chris Meaney, T Mathis Sports as well. If you're looking for more picks, FTNBets.com. A friendly reminder, you can use the promo code FTN20, save yourself 20%. You get all the picks from everybody across all sports over at FTN. And we just saw yesterday, all Big 4 in action. Projections, tools, it's all there for you over at FTNBets.com. Good luck in week 7. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.